Hey gang, it's your boy Platt. Today we're continuing our wine series. This video is going to be a little different because we're not talking necessarily about the winemaking process, wine region per se, but a style of wine based on the needs of a certain religion. We're going to talk about kosher wine today. Kosher wine is produced under Jewish dietary law, something referred to as the kashrut. Now, I want to say before we get too much in this video, I'm not Jewish. I don't know the language well, so if I mispronounce anything, I apologize. I will do the best I can. Kosher wine is more than just a rabbi blessing the wine. This is not like a priest blessing a vineyard or something like that. The main tenet in the production of kosher wine is that a Sabbath observant Jew is involved in the entire process, from planting the vines to picking the grapes to mashing the grapes to the fermentation process, bottling, just involving the entire process that non-Sabbath observant Jews or non-Jews are not involved in the process. And if they get involved in the process, then the wine becomes no longer kosher. Wine in Judaism date back thousands of years, back to the biblical times. And as we know, if you're a wine historian, you know that wine's been involved in religious ceremonies for thousands of years. And that is true with Judaism, but wine was also used in not just Jewish religious ceremony, but other religious ceremonies and other religions ceremonies, and also pagan ceremonies. And that's where the Jewish believe they wanted to kind of separate themselves and their wine from the pagan use of wine, so they kind of created the kosher wines to make sure that the wines they used in their religious ceremonies fit their needs, their religious needs. Kosher wine is used in a lot of their religious holidays, ceremonies, Shabbat dinners, Yom Kippur, bris, or what have you. For Passover, there's actually another level of kosher certification, for lack of a better term. For that, they want to make sure the wine is free of something referred to as shemitz, which is basically grain, whether it's grain, bread, dough, which in winemaking would normally not be an issue, but in some kosher wines, they like their wines a little sweetened, and they would use corn syrup to sweeten those wines. Well, those wines are no longer kosher for Passover. They're still kosher wines, but not kosher for Passover. Kosher wines for Passover then be sweetened with cane sugar. What you're looking for on a bottle of kosher wine is there'll be a seal from a certified kosher certification agency. It could be regional, could be national. There are various organizations out there that would certify not just wine but food as being kosher, and you will want to get their approval and their seal, and that seal is referred to as a heshesher. And it's something you look for. Sometimes you might get multiple heshesher on some wines. It just kind of depends on where they're produced, and again, the agency that is certifying that kosher. One, as you probably, some may be thinking out right now, see some of the issues is, well, if you only have Sabbath observant Jews involved in the whole process, including service, that could really come into some issues. Well, they came up with a partial solution to that. They came up with a style of wine, or what they refer to as Manischewitz wines. What they did was they took their kosher wines and they would end up heating it or cooking it, and in their belief that would make it unworthy for the use in idol rituals, stuff like that. And it also made it where, again, non-Jews would want to use it, what have you. And thus, if that wine, Manischewitz wine, is produced and cooked, then non-Sabbath observant Jews and non-Jews in general can handle that wine and not make it non-kosher. If hopefully that makes sense to you. Now, a lot of people believe, and rightly so, that heating that wine would bring down the quality. Again, that's why others would not desire the wine. So it's not necessarily popular, but if you were having a dinner or whatever and wanted to handle kosher wine because you had some Jewish guests or whatever, that may be a good workaround. There is some controversy on how much of the wine has to be heated or cooked. Some people just move the temperature up a little bit. Some will actually bring it to a boil. Most Manischewitz wines actually are more like flash pasteurized. If you know how like major domestic breweries will flash pasteurize beer, raise the temperature up real quick and then bring it back down. That's generally what they do with these wines. Again, they're not vastly popular, but they are out there, some to keep an eye on. Last but not least, what a lot of people don't know is that kosher wine is more than just that little bottom shelf that has 4 or 5 bottles of wine from New York or wherever there. Kosher wine can be made anywhere with any grape. It can be Pinot Noir, Sauvignon Blanc, red, white, rosé, sparkling. Again, it's not so much about the winemaking process, it's about the person that's involved in the winemaking process. And again, the Sabbath observant Jew being part of that process. And that also means, though, that these wines can be of great quality. It doesn't mean it has to be low quality wine. The wine we're trying today, though, is kind of the standard, kind of the, looked down upon, kind of butt of the joke kosher wine. But the reason I got it was, it's wine either, if you know about kosher wine, you know about this one. If you don't, this is probably the starting point, and that is Manischewitz, made with Concord grapes. If you saw our Vitis Lambrusco video, you know about the Concord grape. Comes in at 11% alcohol by volume. One thing you'll know, one of the first things you'll know on the bottle is it says not kosher for Passover, which means that it has the corn syrup in there and not the cane sugar. It's I believe the wine term's chapelized. Additional sugar's been added, and the sugar they used was corn syrup, and thus it is not kosher for Passover, but still a kosher wine. The Heshisher on there is a U, and that U is for the Union of Jewish Congregations of America. That's who certified this wine as kosher. The company itself, Manischewitz, was founded in 1888, and actually originally was a producer of kosher foods, and still to this day is a producer of kosher foods. In 1927, they started their wine division, and they kept that wine division for roughly 60 years, and then sold off to a company called Monarch Wines of Brooklyn. Makes a lot of sense. There's a large Jewish population here in the U.S., and a large portion of that lives in the Northeast. Again, as we learned about the Concord grape and Vitis Lambrusco last week, a large portion of that grape and those wines are produced in the Northeast. So it just kind of makes the sense that this would be a New York-based company using a kind of a New York native grape to produce. So let's give this a try. All right, now at this point, because I've handled it, because I poured it out, this is no longer kosher, but we're still going to give her a try. Well, it's real, for lack of a term, grapey. Let's give her a try. That is sweet. Woo. Actually, what this tastes like, if you've seen my video on simplest way to produce booze, I took a dark colored grape juice and added a lot of sugar, and we made kind of the lowest form of homemade wine. Well, that dark grape juice that you buy at the grocery store is generally Concord grape. and we add a lot of sugar to it. Now, it wasn't corn sugar, it's just regular table sugar. But in ABV-wise, we got around 10%, so this is kind of it. Now, in that video, I used bread yeast. It didn't taste as good. I wasn't doing a commercial setting, so the yeast they use is better. Of course, they're better at than I am at making the wine, but it tastes like that, just really sweet grapefruit juice with alcohol is kind of what you got here. That being said, for people that probably don't drink a lot of wine and would only drink this on a religious occasion, people new to wine drinking or whatever, this is probably something they could drink because there's not acid or tannins or anything like that. This is pretty much just straight sweetness. Probably something they could, probably something that's very approachable, something they could like. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like the video because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good content. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave them in the comment section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. Till next time, bottoms up.